Thank you all for being here today. Is this working? It's such a pleasure being here today. I had initially thought of talking about the importance of just entrepreneurship in high schools in India. While I started doing some research on the Indian education system, I came across an alarming fact that switched the tone of my talk from a common sense, hey, nice to have framework, to a social and ethical imperative. I'll get straight to the point. India has one of the highest suicide rates among 15 to 29-year-old students in the whole world. Every hour, a student in India commits suicide, and these are just the numbers reported by the National Crime Records Bureau. Take a second to let that sink in. Fear of failure to cope with exams, and a sense of hopelessness were reasons written in suicide notes. India has a world-class STEM education, but the resulting mindset of these students is the antithesis of what a world-class education should yield. Does this not urge us to ask why a 15-year-old would feel these extreme feelings of despair and hopelessness and end their lives, find ways to end their lives when it hasn't even really begun? Really disturbed, I started thinking. And then I realized the sad truth is that most Indian kids derive their sense of self-worth from their grades. From the time they can barely speak, they are taught that it's a shame if their grades do not match up to Sharmaji's son or the neighbor's daughter. There he is. I added this slide for a bit of comic relief because the reality is so not funny. Because with this one single comparison, we stunt a child's ability to become the best version of themselves, instead of striving their whole lives to be a good enough version of someone else. With this one instant, their sense of self is now derived in reference to the next person. Instead of rooting a child's identity in their strengths, we choose to focus on their weaknesses as areas of improvement. This now sets in motion a downward spiral of unmet expectations, a paralyzing fear of failure, and an eventual resentment of the self that causes these students at 15 to take their lives. And these are unrealistic standards set virtuously by well-meaning parents, and I'm being sarcastic because I'm a bit enraged. We need to realize that unless we stop this madness at home of reinforcing good grades instead of encouraging a love of learning, no amount of suicide hotlines and mental health awareness campaigns in schools is going to have a real impact on the mental well-being of these kids. Now, I was a happily mediocre student in high school. Sure, my parents asked me to study, and I did what I had to. But if I ever had the chance to watch cricket or do 10 minutes extra studying, I would always choose cricket. Being a topper was never a life goal for me, because somehow I always knew that my life would start after school. So I left India right after my high school for my education. And I know the kind of unlearning I had to do in order to thrive in an environment where understanding concepts and comprehending ideas were encouraged over memorizing facts, where independent exchange of ideas and original thinking were encouraged as forms of learning. There needs to be a paradigm shift in the Indian education system on the role of education in our lives, on the role of educators in society. Educators need to re-examine their roles in the classroom and outside. We need to stop being figures of authorities and start being nurturers. We need to foster a culture of mutual respect in the classrooms, where students feel just as respected as professors, where their ideas are encouraged and their thinking is heard. Only then will Indian classrooms be foundations of real education, inspiring great ideas. Now, I had always known that I wanted to study biomed, so I majored in biomedical technology. I explored a bit in college. I majored in biomedical technology in my bachelor's. I did not do a master's right after my bachelor's because a master's is not just a lead-in from a bachelor's. I did a master's when I wanted to pursue cancer research at a good lab in the US. So I did my master's in cancer biology, hoping to do a PhD. Once I started working in lab, I didn't do my PhD because I realized that I didn't love lab. I didn't feel like lab was embracing the full range of my abilities. So I did an MBA instead. And in business school, during my entrepreneurship education at Johns Hopkins, that was the first time I felt like I was exploring all those little things that I always thought I was good at. My point in sharing this with you is, don't become a slave to education. Make your education work for you. And education is a functional asset. It's not an ornament. So please, I beg you, don't try to get into medical school when your heart lies in the arts. Why would you try to get into engineering college when you have a natural flair for languages and poetry and storytelling comes naturally to you? The only reason you should spend sleepless nights getting into IIT is if the love is your love for the technological education that IITs provide. Because when that love drives your efforts, it naturally prepares you for the challenges ahead. Look, I'm not here to turn you into intellectual renegades who question education or defy the importance of it. I tremendously respect the importance of education. God knows I've had my share, if it serves your purpose. But I am here to tell you that the role of education is not to fill your minds with information. It is to open up your minds to the possibilities outside. The role of education is not to prepare you for the four walls of your school. It's to prepare you for the uncertainties waiting outside for you once you graduate. We are grossly failing our students. We are grossly failing our youth by preparing them with these myopic curriculums for school, helping them get from one grade to another. I have a fundamental problem with defining the vastness of any human being's potential with one quotient, an exam score, an entrance exam score. I am here to tell you, to every student here and everywhere, you are not your entrance exam score. You are not just your class rank. You are not just an engineering student. And you're certainly not just, I didn't get into engineering student. I have met so many of you. You are kind, you are creative, you're naturally entrepreneurial. You are anything you want to be. And don't let anybody tell you any different. We need to readjust our focus from a weakness and needs-based outlook at home and in school to a talent and strengths-based outlook. Because when we focus on our weaknesses, we as a society end up with a talent deficit economy. But when we focus on our strengths, we end up with a surplus in our talent economy. Nobody ever became super successful by minimizing their weaknesses, but they certainly did so by leveraging their strengths. In this context, entrepreneurship education, according to me, is the single most effective way to imbibe a strengths-focused, purpose-driven outlook in life at any age, especially during our teens. Let's define entrepreneurship because there seems to be some, let's demystify entrepreneurship. Some people think it's just opening up a shop or starting a business. Some kids think it's just doing something cool. Some parents fear that it's their kids dropping out of school, doing something meaningless with their lives. Let's go with the World Economic Forum's definition of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the ability to turn ideas into action through the pursuit of resources not directly in our control. I love this definition because it breaks down a fancy French word into comprehensible terms. I want to draw your attention to the latter half of this definition. Turning ideas into reality sure requires a skill set. But through the pursuit of resources not directly in our control requires a mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset that requires entrepreneurs to have certain traits that builds them to survive the odds. And the beauty of entrepreneurship is, and here's the good news, by the way. According to experts at Stanford University, entrepreneurship can be learned. Take it from me, because I was not naturally entrepreneurial. I learned it. And the beauty of entrepreneurship education is through experiential learning, it helps you uncover your own strengths. It helps you discover talents you didn't even know you had. And when a person becomes aware of something that they're good at, that thing becomes a source of tremendous inspiration in everything they do and view themselves as. But don't get me wrong. Raw talent has very little value in the real world. So when you find that thing, you get really good at it. I like to say that success is the firstborn child of passion and practice. Now, I know passion is an often overused word. A lot of people say, passion is overrated, strengths are overrated. But in entrepreneurship, when you're starting to create something of your own, passion and strength are actually two functional requirements for success, or at least the likelihood of it. Passion, because it's a great cushion for every time you fall, and you will fall. It'll get you up every morning. And strength, because when you're naturally good at something, it gets far easier to excel in that thing, rather than trying to start learning something from scratch that doesn't come naturally to you. Certainly can be done. Now, all this talk of passions and strengths and entrepreneurship, we're missing a key ingredient that makes the entrepreneurial journey, or any journey, the arrival that much sweeter: uncertainty. When I first started thinking about the theme for today, I asked myself, what does embracing uncertainty mean? It was so beautiful. Then I realized it means embracing life. Is there any other way to really live? And then it dawned on me. Without uncertainty, there would be no hope. If you think about it, it's the uncertainty of a thing that helps us appreciate its very being. Praying for a loved one's good health, the idea of love ever after, eternal love, success, and life itself. If we knew for a fact that we'd live forever, if we knew for a fact marriages were meant to last forever, if we were guaranteed success in any venture, birthdays, anniversaries, and celebration of success would lose its meaning. It's the uncertainty of these journeys that lends itself to an accomplishment. Just like every success comes with the chance of a failure, so does every failure stand the chance of turning into a tremendous success eventually. And the only way to find out is to draw your inspiration from your own strengths. Let your passion drive your purpose in life. Embrace the uncertainty of it all and do it anyway. That's how marriages happen. Embrace the uncertainty of it all and do it anyway. So it's my one hope that every single one of you, 15 or 50, ask yourselves, what am I really good at? What is it one thing that I love doing? And it's my one wish that the answer comes to you just as easily as the courage to go do that one thing. So go start that blog, write that poetry, build that app, create that website. Go tell that person you love them. Be an entrepreneurial lover. Because in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. With that, I'd like to share a tiny bit of our journey at Youngpreneurs. We just launched this year, and Youngpreneurs just conducted the very first official teen entrepreneurship camp in India. And it was the most beautiful experience of my life, and spending 5 short days during the workshop with these 14-year-olds was all I needed to experience and witness, to know that young people everywhere are born entrepreneurial. We put them in boxes, and 20 years later, reward them for out-of-the-box thinking at the workplace. And as with any new initiative, some people told us, 15-year-olds, I don't know, parents might think 15-year-olds are too young to be learning about entrepreneurship. What is this mindset you speak of? And I smiled silently. To all of those parents, if you all agree that 15-year-olds are too young to be taking their own lives because of a fear of failure and hopelessness, with the thought that they failed to realize your dreams, I say to you all, 15-year-olds are certainly not too young to start taking charge of their lives. And it's about time we get out of their way and help them create a life of meaning, a life of purpose based on their dreams, not yours. Thank you very much for your time.